And your contribution is enormous in jobs, growth, innovation. But it isn't just a number. It's 5.5 million stories of sacrifice, hard work, and hope that by taking a risk to build your own business, you can build a better future for yourself and your family. Stories like those of Ronnie Savage, who I just met earlier this morning, who runs the engineering firm Jonas Associates. Or Bradbury's Cheese in Buxton, 140 years old this year, and still as committed and knowledgeable as ever. Now, I grew up in a small business. When I wasn't at school, I'd work in my mum's pharmacy, serving customers, doing the bookkeeping, cleaning the shop. Our pharmacy shaped my beliefs about the economy. That pharmacy was ours. We owned it. We had a stake in its success. And if we worked hard, took pride in our work and provided a good service, business would improve. If we didn't, it wouldn't. And that's how it should be. That's the promise of entrepreneurship. Now, I know that that promise has come under strain. COVID, war in Ukraine, inflation, all caused major disruption, drove up the cost of doing business. I know things are still tough, but our plan is starting to work. Inflation, more than halved and falling fast. Growth, higher than anyone expected. Debt, on track to fall. But there is more that we need to do to restore that promise of entrepreneurship. So let me share 3 big steps we're taking to help small businesses. First, we're cutting your taxes. Your money is far better spent by you than by government. So we've increased the VAT threshold to £90,000 for the first time since 2017. We've taken 2 in 5 small businesses out of paying any employer's national insurance at all, thanks to our employment allowance. We've protected over 1 million small businesses from business rates increase, taken a third out of paying any business rates whatsoever, and introduced a relief for retail, hospitality and leisure businesses that mean a small business in England will pay far less in business rates than you would in Wales or in Scotland. And we're cutting national insurance because we want to end the unfairness that you pay tax twice on income from work, but income from other sources is only taxed once. That's why our long-term ambition is to simplify the system and end the double tax on work by abolishing NICs. Now, we've already made good progress. For the self-employed, we've abolished Class 2 NICs and cut your main rate by a third, saving a typical self-employed person around £650 a year. And we've cut NICs for 29 million workers by around £900. That's a £20 billion tax cut for the British people. But we're not done yet. We'll make more progress towards abolition in the next Parliament. Now, our second step to help small business is to cut red tape. Since leaving the EU, we've revoked or reformed more than 2,000 EU laws, with 500 more coming this year, delivering more than £1 billion of savings for businesses and customers. But today, we can go further. We're announcing a new simplification package expected to save small businesses around £150 million a year. Now, take the rules that define who can qualify as a small business. It really matters, because if you don't qualify, suddenly you're hit with a load of extra paperwork. But now, we get to decide these definitions, not the EU. So we're changing the rules to ensure that far fewer businesses are hit by these burdens. We're also tackling late payments with strict new rules that mean any company bidding for large government contracts must show that they pay their own invoices within 45 days. And we're also making it easier for you to hire apprentices. Apprenticeships benefit young people and the businesses who hire them. But for SMEs, the system can be expensive and confusing, despite the huge progress. So, to ensure that funding is available whenever there is demand for apprenticeships, we're increasing the apprenticeship budget by £40 million. And for small businesses hiring young apprentices, we will now fund the cost of their training in full. This will cut costs for businesses and training providers and support thousands more young people to start an apprentice. Now, as well as cutting taxes and red tape, our third step is to make it easier to get the finance you need to start, grow, or invest in your business. For early stage businesses, we've already made the tax reliefs on investment far more generous. We've deployed hundreds of millions to the Regional Angels programme. For larger companies, we've committed £1.6 billion into growth funds in every region of the country, including £400 million right here in the Midlands, as well as the £1 billion startup loan scheme, which has helped over 100,000 businesses, like Castor, started by two brothers in their parents' kitchen in the Wirral, and now this is all about the government directly funding exciting high-growth businesses right across our country. And I genuinely believe it is one of the most generous sets of schemes anywhere in the world. So get on gov.uk and see if you can benefit. But I recognise there has been a gap. Female founders receive just 2% of equity investment, and that figure hasn't budged in a decade. So to change that, we're announcing a new Invest in Women task force, led by Hannah Bernard from Barclays and serial entrepreneur Debbie Wasco. It's going to raise a female-focused investment fund to address that gap. The best place in the world to be a female founder. So, lower taxes, less admin, better access to finance. That's how we're backing our small businesses. Because in the end, the economy isn't some abstract thing. It's about you. 5.5 million risk takers, growth makers, job creators. And our role is to create the conditions for you to thrive, to make sure that your hard work and aspiration is rewarded, and to restore that promise of entrepreneurship. We're not there yet, but we are absolutely moving in the right direction. So let's stick to the plan and build a better, brighter future together. Thank you.
Hello, Prime Minister.
Hello.
So, it was International Women's Days just passed. And although it was a great celebration, the equity problem still continues to persist in business and in investment. Still today, investors are not taking what they perceive to be as risks on female founders, because they are instead going for the option which represents what they look like and where they're from. How can we incentivise investors to back female founders? And more broadly, what can be done to tackle the barrier to female entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, great question to start with. And look, I have two young girls, and as a dad, first and foremost, I want to make sure that my girls grow up in an economy and a society where there isn't a limit to their ambitions and aspirations. And if they want to start their own businesses one day, making sure that they have access to the finance they need is really important. So look, we have made progress. In the last year that we have numbers for, we had a record number of female founders, and that has doubled over the last 5 or 6 years. But there's clearly more to do, as I alluded to. We just haven't got enough money going into this, which is why we've announced this new task force, which will raise money for a dedicated fund. And I think that will make a big difference. And it will complement the things we're doing to ensure that big FTSE companies have more women in leadership positions, where, again, there's been very good progress. But maybe I could actually touch on two slightly related areas, which I think actually will make a difference too. When I talk to female business leaders, actually what they talk to me about a lot is childcare, and making sure that there is good access to childcare so they can juggle family and work, which is never easy, but making it easier is something that people have always wanted. And I'm really pleased that actually we're in the middle of one of the biggest expansions of childcare that our country's ever seen. That will kick in, because we're on the path, and Gillian's here, we're on the path to making sure that everyone in work can have access to 30 hours of free childcare from the time that their little one is 9 months old until they start school. And when that is fully rolled out, I think it will be transformational, particularly benefiting female founders. So that's the first thing, I think, to focus on. And as I said, and Gillian could talk about it later, but in just a few weeks' time, that's about to start happening. And the second thing I'd say is about role models. And, I can't emphasise this enough, particularly female founders in traditionally male industries. And, Julie's here somewhere from Deidre. All I'd say is, for all of you who have done that journey, don't underestimate the power you have in just going back to schools, to colleges, and talking about your experience, right? Because what we need our young girls to see is that there isn't a limit to what they can achieve. And actually, forget about all the policies we can put together in Whitehall or in Downing Street. You know, I want my kids to be able to hear from people like you, from Julie and others, and go, okay, well, that's possible. I can do that. And that's why whenever I actually talk to female engineers in particular, as I was doing earlier today at the Apprentices, I was like, make sure you go back to your college and your school and tell them what you're working on and what your job is now. And that will inspire a new generation of young women to, you know, dream big and go realise those ambitions. So I think that is an important part of it, which is less about government and more about fantastic entrepreneurs like you, Julie, and others, you know, sharing that and passing it on.
I was in a school doing just that last week.
Excellent. Very happy to hear.
Okay, moving on to hospitality. It's the third largest employer in the UK. It generates 93 billion in revenue. 2/3 of hospitality venues in the UK are independent. I'm the chair of a group of independent hospitality owners who are working hard to build back post the really difficult COVID years, but are now impacted by huge inflation. If we want to attract and retain world-class talent to live in the UK, they want thriving cities to live in. And that looks like streets buzzing with successful hospitality venues, with places to have a great coffee, go for lunch, go to the theatre. How will you give hospitality the shot in the arm it needs?
Yeah. Yeah, I think most of you probably got to know me during the pandemic when I was Chancellor. And I ended up doing a lot for the hospitality industry, precisely because, as you made the point, Emma, it's so important for our economy. It's such a massive employer, 2 million people plus, and particularly, actually, it employs people from disadvantaged backgrounds, people working on lower wages, women, people from ethnic minorities, people coming off welfare. For all those reasons, actually, I always said, look, as a matter of social justice, it's important to support that industry. But also, you made the point, it's the beating heart of all our communities, right? Whether it's the village pub or your market town high street, you know, those are the things that enrich our communities. We need to make sure that they remain vibrant. And that's why, again, it's important that we support these businesses. And you're right, pandemic has been really tough. Of course it has, and then inflation makes life tougher as well, which is why we did a lot to try and help businesses get through, and largely that was successful. But what we're doing now is from businesses in this industry is business rates, and they'd say, hang on, before I've had a single customer through the door, I've already got hefty business rates billed. So the focus of our policy over the last few years has been constantly freezing and cutting business rates, you know, to take out, I think, almost now a third of all small retail hospitality businesses from paying any business rates at all. I mean, these are billions of pounds of tax cuts that we've found the money for. And just to give you a sense of the contrast, and I'll make a slight political point here, you know, we have introduced a 75% discount on business rates for shops, restaurants, cafes, pubs. That hasn't been matched in Scotland or in Wales. Right? In Scotland, they've got rid of it altogether. In Wales, they've massively cut the relief. And that makes a huge difference. So for a typical pub, you know, rateable value about 30 grand, in England, their business rates bill is going to be £4,000 this year. It's not going to change. In Scotland, I think, in Wales, actually, it will be more than double at 10,000. And I think in Scotland, it will be 15,000. Just think about that difference, right? If you're that small business owner, right, and these are that's thousands of pounds of extra taxes you're paying before a single customer has walked through your door, because we've prioritised supporting that sector, supporting these businesses. And in Wales and Scotland, they haven't, right? And that's because we believe in backing small businesses and particularly backing those shops, those cafes, those restaurants that are the beating hearts of all our communities.
Okay. Before we go to the audience for questions, I'm sure we can all agree on the benefits of unleashing the full potential of British entrepreneurs and startups. However, we operate at a much faster pace than government. What more can government do to support entrepreneurs?
Yes, you do all operate faster than government. Well, I mean, hopefully, first of all, it's having people in government that understand business. I think, you know, whether that, you're sitting here, right? I've got ministers here. You've got Kemi, Kevin, Gillian and me. All of us come from a private sector business background, right? You know, Kevin founded his own business, right, very successfully. You know, all of us have been involved in business all our lives. And hopefully the fact that we understand business ourselves mean that we can try and make policy that benefits you and try and move at a pace that will work for all of you. Look, I think the couple other things I'd say is making sure that we create an environment where you can innovate fast is really important, because ultimately that's how we drive growth. So whether it's supporting R&D, the grants from Innovate UK, which we've protected and increased over time, and making sure our programs like Help to Grow are in place to give you the tools that you need, so you don't rely on us, but we can provide you with the support and advice that you need to take your business to the next level, I think is the right approach, because we're not going to make every decision for you. You guys know how to do that. We just need to provide that environment. And I talked a little bit about the overall macro environment. That's our job, right, is to make sure inflation is coming down, interest rates are coming down, more money is going into people's pockets to spend in your businesses, making sure regulation and red tape is being cut, as Kemi's been doing brilliantly over the past year, because that just makes your life a bit easier, making sure we have apprenticeships and apprentices for you to power your business, as Gillian's been doing, and the announcement today is further proof of that, right? That's our job, right? And then your job is to go and do what you do brilliantly, and we'll try and get out of your way.
Thank you. Okay, open to the audience for questions. Julie.
Hi, Julie White. I'm Dedrill. I'm from Managing Director and owner of Dedrill and Soaring, and we're from Coventry. So thank you for coming and supporting our amazing city. From our business, we are 75% of all our employees, of our apprentices, have come from apprenticeships, and it's the only way that we can grow our business, because we cannot get a concrete cutter from college, from university, from school. So your announcements today is fantastic, but we seem to have devalued apprenticeships in the UK, because the only way into industry or any fantastic job is through university. So I feel that we should rally more for apprentices. We should really be backing them. And as you said, a woman running a concrete cutting company, we can do anything. Also, like the construction industry right now, this week, we open doors. And so I've got 5,000 school children and college people and university coming into over 250 sites in construction. So we're showing them there's 2,000 different jobs in construction. So that's what we're trying to do in construction, but we need the young people to come into apprentices. So your fantastic announcement today, I can see it, but how do you think it's really going to work for us SMEs, the ones that are employing, the ones that have got the technology, the ones that are doing the do? Yeah. And remember, £1 spent in construction, £3 goes back to the great economy. 1 in 10 of us is in construction. So how do you think it's going to fit? What you've announced this morning, how do you think it's going to work?
Perfect. Thanks, Julie. Well, and nice to be in your hometown. Any Coventry fans in the audience? Yeah, there you go. Good weekend. So, look, I'll get into the policy stuff in a second. But if you just want to know, in a simple one sentence, how important apprenticeships are to me, then I'll just tell you this. For the first time in our country's history, we have an apprentices education secretary. Right, and she's sitting in front of you. So we'll get into all the policy stuff in a second, but for anyone who wants to know, do I care about apprenticeships? Do I believe in apprenticeships? Yeah, for the first ever time, we've got an apprentices education secretary deliberately, because I think they're fantastic and we should champion them every day. You know, from a kind of, let's get into the detail of it. I think what you said was right a decade ago about the perception of apprenticeships, but because of the work over the governments over many years now, since 2010, I think we have changed that, right? But in 2010, there were no quality controls properly for apprenticeships, so they had been devalued, right? But we introduced the Institute of Apprenticeships. We have now 650 standards that we created in conjunction with all of you and your trade associations to make sure that these are quality apprenticeships, and we got rid of the ones that weren't. We put proper training in there, and we created the apprenticeship. And now is completely, radically different from what we inherited in 2010, and it is now a world-class system. People always say, oh, Germany, Germany. We have way more jobs in our country that you can do through an apprenticeship than they do in Germany. In fact, twice as many. Right? I mean, it's very counterintuitive, right? You wouldn't expect that, but that's how much of a good job we've done making sure that we've got apprenticeships for everybody over the past few years. Now, making sure that small businesses in particular can access them is important. Why? Because small businesses disproportionately hire young apprentices. And we want to make sure that all the fantastic people that I met this morning, have the opportunities they need to have fulfilling careers. And that's why the announcements today are important. So, you told us that the bureaucracy of onboarding the whole apprenticeship was a nightmare. Kemi, Gillian, Kevin and others took it away and we fixed it. And now you can see in the data, way easier and better for you. So hopefully you appreciate that. And then you said, look, it's the contribution that we have to make means that we can hire less. So today we've announced that we're scrapping it. So it will be completely free for you to take on that apprenticeship. You won't have to pay for the training. We'll do all of that. And thirdly, what you've said to us is there are big, large businesses that want to spend their levy with small businesses, but we've got a cap on that at 25%. So we've taken that all the way up to 50% today. I think so those things taken together are going to mean that tens of thousands more apprenticeships will be created, and that's going to be brilliant for young people. But the thing all of us collectively need to do is to change the culture in this country. Now, we're going to do that and do our bit, and Gillian can do that better than most. But all of us need to make sure that young people know that having an apprenticeship is a fantastic route into work and to build their life and their career. That's what we all believe. I don't think everyone has to go to university at all. Right? Apprenticeships now work for pretty much every career, and they're a great route for achieved. And one of the things I'm really proud that we did was put apprenticeships on the UCAS system. Well, that might seem like a small thing, but in the classroom, my view is there shouldn't be this artificial divide between all these people going off to university, get to do this UCAS process, and everyone who's not doing that somehow is a second-class citizen. That can't be right. So we've just got to end that kind of distinction, and just putting apprenticeships on the UCAS system is another step to changing the culture. Having people like you and everyone else champion it as a model is how we're going to keep going. But I was meeting them all today. I mean, they are so excited about their future, all the young apprentices here. You talk to them about their career. I believe that our announcements today and the support of Kemi and Gillian and others means that we will have young people doing absolutely what they want through apprenticeships, and that's going to be something that's brilliant for them, brilliant for the country.
Thank you. One more. George?
Good morning, Prime Minister. My name's George Paul. I'm chairman and owner of a company called Bradbury's Cheese, in now our 140th year in business. It was less than 8 years ago that we were persuaded, pushed in fact, for the DBT, who changed our approach to being a home bird, so to speak, and we embarked on exporting with their considerable help. And today we do around £10 million a year into 20 countries as a direct result. I won't tell you the commercial benefit that brings, but you can be assured as a Yorkshireman, I need that certainty that that it's a good return, and it has been. What advice could you give as Prime Minister for budding entrepreneurs, small companies, both in food trade and allied trade and all the rest of the great British industry, to take that leap to look for success and do it a little earlier than I did? I wish I'd done it 25 years ago, but there wasn't the environment. The environment's got better and better to support exporters and to do it for themselves, to do it for the company and do it for the country.
Yeah. Well, George, I think everyone will want to join me in just saying thank you to you and your family for what you've done, actually. It's really impressive. What bits of advice can I give? I think the first is to, all those small businesses that don't do this currently, is to have confidence in what you do, because as George's family found, and those of you who've exported have found, the world wants to buy British, right? So start from a position of just confidence in what you do, right? But we stand for quality, we stand for best in class, we stand for innovation, and around the world, they want to buy British things and British services. So I think just before you even think about it, just start with that confidence as the first thing I'd say. And the second thing is there's lots of help. because it's not an easy thing. It will feel daunting to you if you haven't done it before. But Kemi's team have got everything that you need. I mean, genuinely, I say that, and I mean it. If you go to great.gov.uk, I think that's about the right URL, isn't it? Everything that you need is there. So what the team at DBT have is one-on-one specialist help. They can walk you through the process. There's opportunities that we've already sourced from all our embassies around the world, where they're actually we know that they want something and they just need to find a British supplier. And there are fantastic export champions. I think, George, you might even be one of these, who you can talk to, people like George who have gone through this journey, and we have them around the country ready to, again, mentor and help your business through it. And then the last thing is we have an incredible organisation called UK Export Finance, which provides finance to those businesses internationally that are looking to buy from British companies, right? And they've done an extraordinary job, billions of pounds, and enabled billions of exports as a result. So, look, lots of help out there to help you through the journey. I think you'll find it incredibly rewarding, but it just starts with confidence to know that there is a massive market out there for what you are doing, because we do things better than most countries here, and everyone else is excited to get a piece of it. So, be bold, be brave, follow George's example, and don't wait 140 years. Get cracking this week.
Great. Finally, to wrap up, final question. You said the economy is turning a corner. Running a business is tough, and many of the companies in this room will be apprehensive about the future. What would you say are reasons for us all to be optimistic, Prime Minister?
Look, I'll start with the macro picture, because crikey, it's been tough, right? I mean, of course it's been tough. What a tough few years. COVID, then we started recovering from that, then war in Ukraine, energy bills, inflation. Like, none of that is easy. Not easy for me, not easy for any of you. But we really have turned a corner at the start of this year. Inflation has been more than halved. Mortgage rates, energy bills falling, wages rising, consumer confidence, business confidence increasing. And because of all of that, we've been able to meaningfully start cutting taxes. Cutting taxes for individuals, £900 for someone on average salary, that's significant. Cutting taxes for businesses that are investing, right, which was done in the autumn, which will help drive growth into the future. So look, that's the backdrop, right? After a tough couple of years, we're now pointing in the right direction. And that actually gives me a lot of confidence for the future. But you don't have to take my word for it, right? You can see it in what CEOs around the world are saying and doing. When you look at these surveys that are done by companies like PwC, where do global CEOs want to invest? They want to invest here in the UK, right? And you saw that in the Global Investment Summit that Kemi hosted at the end of last year. We had 3 times the amount of money committed to the UK than we'd had the last time around we did that 2 years ago, right? 3 times, something like 30, 40 billion pounds worth. We've got Nissan making a new generation of electric vehicles up in Sunderland. We've got Jaguar Land Rover doing the same further south. Ørsted are building the world's biggest offshore wind farm off the east coast. And we've got Microsoft and Google pretty much doubling their footprint of data centres in the UK. So look, they're all voting and with their feet and with their pocketbooks, because they know this is a great place to invest. But ultimately, why am I confident? I'm confident because I get to spend time with people like all of you, right? And you just, where's Richard's over there, right? I mean, everyone should just spend 5 minutes with Richard after this if they want to feel optimistic. Richard runs a barber shop that's expanding, not just in the UK, but over to the US. What an incredible success story, right? Or, Tom, who runs Castor, who I referenced in my remarks, is on all my business councils, right? Literally kitchen table of his parents' home in the Wirral, and now it's a global brand that all of you will see when you're watching your sport at the weekend, right? And we have so many fantastic entrepreneurs like all of you. That's what ultimately gives me confidence for the future. And I think we are now creating the conditions which will allow you to keep growing, keep investing, keep expanding, keep creating jobs and opportunity for young people. And that's exciting. And after a tough couple of years, I really think the plan we put in place is starting to show that it's working. Change is being delivered, and all of you will be able to take that and create a brighter future for everyone, not just your families, but actually for the whole country. And that's what we're going to keep going and keep on delivering.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Great.
All right, everyone. First of all, thank you to the Prime Minister because the efforts that he is making to advance opportunity across our United Kingdom, to champion innovation and aspiration, and to build a society in which the hard work of all our small business owners is recognised and rewarded is absolutely critical. And I say that because it's the businesses represented in this room today, from Lucky Saint to Libby London, that are the backbone of our economy. Almost every business in the UK, 99.9% in fact, is an SME. Almost every job created in the UK is owed to what is now, or once was, an SME. And if you think of our most iconic British brands, Dyson, started out right here in Coventry, they were all born from humble beginnings as small businesses too. And it's why my department's mission is to equip businesses like all of yours with the tools and support that you need to thrive. We've already done a lot to help SMEs. Prime Minister gave a long list of things that we are currently doing. Our small business rates relief means a third of you won't pay any business rates at all. Through the British Business Bank, we have the CEO Louis here today. We're ensuring that small businesses can access the right finance at the right time to help them grow. And at the recent budget, the Chancellor cut national insurance rates, saving your average self-employed business owner £650 a year. He also raised the VAT threshold, which means next year over 28,000 fewer businesses will not need to register for VAT at all. Our aim is to keep this momentum on SMEs over the coming weeks and months. People often hear us talking about business. They think it's always big business, the large corporations. They hear the billions and billions and think it's not about them, but it isn't. It really is about the businesses that are the lifeblood of this country, the small and medium-sized enterprises. So we've just launched our Help to Grow campaign, offering a full suite of cross-government support for small and medium-sized businesses all in one place. We've also recently announced the formation of our brand new Small Business Council to expertly advise government on policy. It brings together trusted voices, including the Federation of Small Businesses and Small Business Britain. But crucially, it also includes small business leaders, and I'm pleased that Thomas Robson-Kanu and many of our council members are in the audience today. We've just heard from the Prime Minister about what the government is doing to support small business. My department is playing its part too. Last year, we invited applications from companies to temporarily suspend tariffs on key imports that you need, from chemicals to ceramics to fruit and vegetables. And today, I can confirm, we've accepted over 150 applications for new suspensions. This is a big boost for companies of all sizes, and we're reducing the cost of these imports for their business. We also want homegrown companies to compete with the best of the best in the global market. And that starts with ensuring that every small business owner feels capable and confident in using cutting-edge digital technology. It's why my department recently announced a new digital adoption task force, helping SMEs to supercharge their productivity by using all the new digital tools that are there at our fingertips. And in support of that effort today, I am announcing the chair of that task force will be Phil Smith. Phil brings with him a wealth of experience as the chairman of IQE, the former head of Cisco, and the chair of Innovate UK. Just 20 minutes down the road at the Coventry Transport Museum is the Thrust SSC. It's the British-built vehicle that holds the land speed record that has stood for 25 years. And sitting alongside it is the Bloodhound LSR, the latest machine hoping to break that record. If you talk to the engineers working on these marvels of manufacturing, they'll tell you that as important as improving the size of the engine is reducing drag, the friction that slows the vehicle down, reduces its range and wears it out. And as an engineer myself, I know that this principle applies to business too. Unlocking investment, cutting back red tape, lowering business costs to spur higher growth. That is how this government is reducing drag for SMEs in this economy so that you can go further and faster. And we want to carry on working in partnership with industry to deliver for you in this year, 2024, the year of the SME. Our ambition is to make the UK the best place in the world in which to start and grow a business. So in that spirit, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage two excellent entrepreneurs, Libby Hart, the CEO and founder of Libby London, who previously worked in the world's top investment banks, becoming a director at just 28 years old. And I'm delighted to say she is also an advisor on our board of trade, which is helping businesses from our smallest startups to our biggest brands to export more and break into new markets. And Thomas Robson-Kanu, the former Premier League footballer, Welsh international and CEO of the Turmeric Company, one of the UK's fastest growing health brands today. And thank you, everyone. Please have a seat. All right, so it's a real pleasure to have two successful entrepreneurs here talking about their experiences of setting up a growing business here in the UK, so thank you. And I hope that we'll have some time to take questions from the audience as well. But I wanted to, first of all, start by saying that as government, we understand the challenging environment that business has been operating in. If I think about when I first started in politics, had coalition governments, changes in policy, there's been Brexit, there's been COVID, a war in Europe, now a war in the Middle East, difficulties with supply chains, in the Red Sea. I think what is actually phenomenal is that our businesses are still here, are still working, thriving and growing. So it's a testament to all of you. We are not the ones who grow the economy. It's not government. It is business. It's our job to create the environment for you. And that's really what I wanted this conversation to be about. What is it that we can do? You've heard the Prime Minister talk about the things that government is doing. Things are turning around. We are doing better than competitor countries. But speaking to small business owners and entrepreneurs like yourself will be helpful, like yourselves, pardon me, will be helpful for us in terms of forming new policy. So I'll start off very briefly by asking both of you, just as an intro to the audience, to tell us more about your company's journeys and the challenges and obstacles that you have had to overcome. So we'll start with Libby and then Thomas.
So we are a women's wear label. We specialise in women's workwear. Kemi is very much target market. And we've been going for a year to keep making stuff here. So for the first 10 years, we made absolutely everything here. And even now, it's become a bit more challenging, but we still make 30% here. And I guess that's our single biggest challenge, because being able to make here makes us more attractive abroad. And that, for the future, for us, that's our key selling point, really.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yes, so my father and I launched the Turmeric Company in 2018, and the premise was to bring a range of natural, health-focused turmeric shots, which were originally a family-made recipe, to market. And in order to do so, we had to become a manufacturing business as well as a brand. So not only did we have to understand the complexities of supply chain, distribution, and ultimately manufacture, we also had to understand the route to market, how we could position our brand and our product in a very saturated and confusing consumer market and really show differentiation. And we were able to do that by launching the Turmeric Company in 2018, initially as a direct consumer business, building a subscription model which scaled very successfully. But alongside that, we needed to scale our manufacture too. And so, yeah, it's been quite the journey, following a journey in elite sports, which we're very grateful for, and over a decade at the top level. But looking at business within the UK economy, when we look at it, we talk about stimulus and productivity. Hence the reason of the Small Business Council, headed by Minister Hollerake, as fantastically as he's done. And so for us now, it's about how do we really drive stimulus and drive productivity through what we're doing. And for me, I think it's about delivering champions to the UK economy. And so for us, we need to be able to champion what we're doing within our sector, but communicate that to the wider audiences to give them belief and hope as well.
All right. Thank you very much. And you've both come from different setting up your own business. And startups are one area that the government has been focusing on. Minister Hollerake, Kevin will be coming on talking a little bit more about all that we've done. But while we are here, you've got ministers across the department. You've got the CEO of the British Business Bank. I'm keen to be the voice of business in government. What's your number one priority ask of government to support UK businesses? And this might be something that we'd open up to questions later on as well. There's one thing, if you were in my shoes, there's one thing that you could do. What would it be?
I had two things.
Yes, okay. Yes, you can have two things.
Because I've already talked about British manufacturing, and that would be my number one. Just helping those British manufacturers make a better product, help them find the skills, which the apprenticeship scheme obviously does for us. Also, investing in women. That female juggle, trying to have children and run a business at the same time is just about impossible, it feels, at times. So helping women do that and putting pressure on bigger companies to make it easier for women to work, mothers to work.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, no, I think diversity and knowledge transfer is extremely important, and ultimately that touches a number of areas, but delivering access and availability, but the understanding that opportunity is there. The Prime Minister spoke today about that there are opportunities to support businesses through various different channels within government, but actually if you were to speak to a lot of small, medium businesses, particularly entrepreneurs, startups, the understanding that those opportunities are actually there is very few and far between. Mm-hmm. So I would say, really making the opportunities available, visible, and having individuals to communicate that. And I think the government is clearly taking steps to do that, hosting days like today, supporting that growth. So and that will be another positive step, because there are a lot of founders and entrepreneurs out there who will become the next generation's, blue chip companies in time, but they need that support and access now.
Thank you. And I think that what you touched on in terms of the understanding that people have of what it's like to start a business, being an entrepreneur, I worry sometimes that the next generation is seeing less and less of it. People are afraid of taking risks. They don't know if they're going to have the right support. Whether it can't always be government support, sometimes it will be, but even support in their community. They see a lot of charm and they think, oh, this is too difficult. So I think it's worth hearing a little bit about how you have adapted when you've had those obstacles, how you've adapted to those challenges. Because I think what's really fantastic about entrepreneurs is that you're problem solvers. You are people who, things that get thrown your way and you find a way around it, you find a way to overcome. And talking a little bit more about that, I think would help in challenging that, that fear of risk that people have.
I guess the biggest way we've adapted is we set up as a retail business originally, and our customer was bankers, lawyers, core retail women. Managing to grow, because I don't have a retail background, I didn't even know how to make clothes. I didn't really know how difficult that was going to be, which is probably a good thing, otherwise you'd never do it. But about 3 years in, we were really struggling and just couldn't find a way of acquiring customers quick enough, and we sort of by accident ended up starting to do corporate uniforms, which was not what I ever wanted to do, not what I set out to do, but we quite quickly realised that having a kind of second string to our bow as a small business, it actually made all the difference for us. And we still have 30% of our revenue is still corporate uniforms. We keep it a bit quiet because it's not as cool as having a fashion label. Dips in the economy that we've had, especially over the last few years, that kind of slow but steady corporate uniform business has seen us through those. So.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, no, I obviously had over a decade in one of the most competitive industries in the world, professional football, where every young boy wants to become a professional footballer. So I was fortunate enough to have a career within that industry, and what that taught me was that at the very top level, when you play in the Premier League, and I played for over a decade in the Premier League, there's 200 players at any given time in the whole world that are playing at that level. That's elite sport and it's extremely competitive, but moving into the business world and looking at SMEs across the board, you are actually as an SME in that elite spectrum as well, and so it's okay that it's competitive. It's not meant to be easy. It's extremely challenging. And I think actually communicating that, owning that and understanding that is an important step for SMEs, because that's where you realise that you're playing with the best. So for us now, we've just launched into Sainsbury's, into Holland and Barrett. So we're now sat on shelf. Our turmeric shots are sat on shelf against, the big boys. And we're stealing shelf from those, large corporates, blue chips within the food and beverage industry. And so for us, we have to really understand that it's not meant to be easy because it's a very competitive industry, but actually acknowledging that and owning that is a really important step for any SME, because it makes you get on with it and it makes you look at the opportunities to ultimately compete at that level.
All right. So I'm going to ask one final question before we open up to questions from the audience. I'll start with you, Thomas. It's the same question to both of you. What do you know now that you wished you knew when you were starting out in business?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, again, we're fundamentally products of our environment. So my environment, again, I'll reference back to sport. And within sport, you have to play in a team, when you play professional football or rugby or hockey or whatever it is. And so even individual sports such as tennis, you still have a team, your backroom staff, your physiotherapists, everyone. And so stepping into the business world, it took me probably 1 or 2 years to really understand that actually it is exactly the same. You are only as good as the individual standing next to you. And actually when you have the right individuals within your organisation and the right individuals in the right seats within your organisation, that's when you begin to flourish. So I would say, a real emphasis on team, knowledge, skill, and being able to transfer that into the business to apply that knowledge to make it effective is key. And that's what we're beginning to see now.
Louis?
For us, international growth, without a doubt, which is ridiculously something I just ignored for years and years. And I was so focused on growing our customer base here, I just didn't really think about it. And actually, it did genuinely take a conversation with DBT for me to think, why are we not doing this? We were spending a lot on our social ads here and our Google ads here. We do hundreds of thousands of catalogues here, and we just never tried to do them abroad. In the last couple of years, we've really changed that, and it took the tiniest tweak on our website. I always thought we'd have to build this, and it literally took me, I think, 2.5 minutes to turn that on. And why didn't I do that years ago? And now that revenue stream is really, really helping us, again, especially as it's been a little challenging here recently. That's really helped us, so growing internationally.
Thank you both. And now questions from the audience. They can be to any of us. The gentleman in the middle. Sorry, the lights are very bright, so I may not see you. Please keep your hands up. Yes. If there's a microphone going that way.
I could project this way, sorry. My question was about the disconnect between education and the world of business. We talked about young people and the attitudes that they bring to work. What can we do to connect up the business and the education sector so we've got more career-aware people and more work-ready people coming into the workplace to support the apprenticeship programs?
It's a great question. So in case people didn't hear the question, it was about making sure, how do we make sure that we get people more career ready, especially around apprenticeships. I think that as much as possible, business going into schools is really important. But don't just focus on the students, also focus on the teachers. We often forget about the teachers and just talk to the students, but the teachers are often, they're often an interloper in terms of giving young people advice about what the workplace is going to be like, what they need, what skills that the pupils need are often determined by the bias of the teachers that they have at those schools. When I go out in my constituency and speak to students, they often tell me that, oh, well, my teacher said this, and it's very different what teachers' experience of the workplace is actually from what local businesses' experiences are. So yes, having apprenticeships, starting as early as possible, because not everybody is going to go to university, getting them in to work, getting them used to what work is like is important. I think COVID in particular has had a very, very bad effect in terms of what people expect from a working environment. Working from home as well means that lots of people don't have those interactions, which they would, those social interactions where they would pick up many of the skills that you get almost by osmosis from being in the workplace. So we've got to work harder on that. The government has a skills agenda very focused on T levels as well as A levels, so that the things that employers need are being taught to young people, not just the academic skills that are good for exams and good for getting into university, but actually aren't that practical. But it's got to be a partnership between government, and not just national government, but also local government, schools and business. And I think that will help in terms of getting a generation career ready for the workplace, not just for getting their degrees and diplomas. Thank you. Yes, the lady in the front, please.
Hello, my name's Sandra Murphy. I'm the CEO of Equidite UK Limited. Yeah. I created the world's first liquid feed for horses, and I'm the 9th black woman in the history of the UK to get a patent. And I go into schools as well, and I try and inspire young people. But I live in Lincolnshire, and the demographic in Lincolnshire means that there's very few ethnic minorities represented in that county. And there is a fact that less than 0.3% of black women get funding in the UK. Is there any sort of initiative there for women? I know there's one for women, but being a black woman in industry as well, and especially the industry that I'm in, which is predominantly very white middle class industry in equine, is there any campaigns or anything out there specifically to help black women to get funding in rural areas?
Thank you. And I know what you mean. So I represent a constituency that is about 98% white, and yet people there voted for me. I look completely different from the average person walking down the street in Saffron Walden in Essex. So no, we don't have any specific ethnicity-based support programs, but that is for a particular reason. There is a very clear need when you look at women in particular in the workplace versus men. It's very simple. It's quite binary. There's a lot of data and a lot of evidence. With ethnicity, there's a whole spectrum. There's lots of different people. And we had a report that came out about a year or two ago called Inclusive Britain. And there's a program in there about inclusion at work. What we are trying to do is make sure that people face attitudes that are better rather than, and that will help in terms of things like access to finance and so on. I personally, and I say this not just as the business secretary, but also as the equalities minister, worry that if we divide people into too many groups at some point, it stops being about helping people overcome discrimination and actually just about which group is getting which pot of money. So no, the government doesn't prioritize based on race, but we do look at circumstances which would impact you. What you will have in common with a lot of people is not just being an ethnic minority, but perhaps a niche business that a lot of people don't understand, trying to talk to people who might have a different background from yours. That's why things like the schemes that we have through the British Business Bank, they are tailored for people who will fall into those categories, irrespective of their ethnic background or their social class. It's amazing how often we find people talking about the difficulty they have in communicating the value of their business to people who don't have experience of it. I think it is a genuine challenge, and there is support out there. If you look at our Help to Grow website, the Prime Minister mentioned great.gov.uk. That's very much about exporting, but our Help to Grow website will have things that will help you, irrespective of what your business is and what your background is as well. So please, I'm sure we've got staff in the room as this session, but please afterwards do ask us, and we'll be able to provide you with more information. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, there's a gentleman right up there at the end. Sorry, I am trying to see. I'm blinded.
Good morning, Ian O'Donnell from the Federation of Small Businesses. Great to hear the announcement about apprenticeship funding for SMEs, but two things. One, which is, how do we encourage the sort of second and third career who need to retrain to be able to get access to funding to allow them to retrain into a new career to access workforce of the future, not just from the younger workforce? And secondly, many SMEs, while it's not just about the cost of training, but the cost of onboarding that person in a small business, and making sure those apprenticeships are fit for the niche needs of that business. We've just heard from a very niche business there. So how do we continue that drive forward to make the apprenticeship system as flexible as possible and appropriate to all ages to be able to access for our future workforce needs?
So it's a very good point. We all think of apprentices as 16, 17-year-olds who've never done a day's work in their lives. But in the fast-moving economic environment that we're in, people do need to retrain. As far as I'm aware, the apprenticeship levy and the schemes that we have do cover people who are mid-career. It may be that perhaps we're not advertising that as much as we possibly can do. I'd be keen to find out a little bit more about some of the examples which you are referring to. But it is absolutely the case that if you are somebody who has been in a career for a long time, there do tend to be perceptions about what you can or cannot do. It's one of the reasons why we're very focused on the skills program, Help to Grow, because many of the people who are looking to a second career won't necessarily just be going to work in someone else's company. They'll be looking to start on their own, just as Libby and Thomas were talking about. So we want to make sure that the suite of support that we're giving is going to work irrespective of who you are, how old you are, which part of the country you're in. But we also need feedback as well. One of the things that I find as a government minister is that people assume that we know every single thing that's going on about every single aspect of all of your different industries and sectors. We don't. We need you. That's why we have conferences like these. Don't assume that we know everything. We know what you tell us. We try and solve some things. If they're not working, if the scheme is not what you think it would be, let us know. Sometimes we may be able to change it. Sometimes we won't. But there'll be good reasons for that, and we'll try and communicate that as well so that everyone can see what the pathway is for continuous improvement and learning throughout their life as well. Thank you. The gentleman up there, and then the one at the end. I think we've got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Andy Slee. I represent SEBA. We're 700 10,000 people. Half of our members last year applied for finance to grow their businesses. 40% of those were turned down due to COVID debt or COVID losses. What's available to add much needed capital into what is a British manufacturing success story?
Right, thank you. So this is something that we are acutely aware of. We've had a recovery loan scheme specifically for this scenario which you have described. COVID did a lot of damage to businesses across the country, and it also made many banks actually just more risk averse. It was very hard to tell who was a bad business versus who was a business that was affected by COVID. We've actually renamed the recovery loan scheme. Kevin, remind me.
Growth Guarantee Scheme. Yes,
the Growth Guarantee Scheme. I've still got the old name in my head, because we don't want to label businesses as all being in recovery. We want to move on from the COVID period. The Growth Guarantee Scheme is one example of the funding that is available. But the £660 million that we announced today, I know it's Northern Powerhouse money, but it is again something that we're doing to tackle just that problem which you have described. You know, we're sitting in an advanced manufacturing centre. I'm the minister responsible for industrial policy. Manufacturing is the backbone of this country. It has been for a long time. And we've got a great story to tell. We've overtaken France to become the 7th largest manufacturing country in the world. So good things are happening, but they're happening because we're not being complacent about them. And that means looking after those businesses like yours, or like the ones you described, pardon me, which are having a really difficult time. I've also mentioned previously some of the schemes that the British Business Bank has on offer in terms of providing access to finance, and I hope that that will recover. I've just got time for one more question. I'll take the gentleman over there, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, my name's Byron Dixon. I'm the CEO of Microfresh. We're an antimicrobial brand, and I'll make this quick because I know we're short on time. But you can see our name in things like John Lewis bedding with Microfresh technology. It'll last longer, bacteria can't grow. I've got 2 questions. One is access to government contracts. I think for SMEs, it's an easy way for the government to grow the economy, and that's either as a Tier 1 or Tier 2 supplier. In our case, I'm talking about mould, especially in MOD homes. And the other one is a question for Libby, is what is this 2.5-minute tweet you made to your website to sell it to the US?
I'll let Libby go first, because I think that will be shorter, and then I will come in on government contracts.
Shopify Markets if anyone has a Shopify website and hasn't turned on the Shopify Markets button, I would recommend you do it immediately on your mobile. It literally takes, you can install Shopify Markets. In fact, it might already be pre-installed in anyone with a Shopify website. And there's literally a little toggle that you turn on, and then you select your countries you want to sell in, and Shopify makes it really easy. And then immediately you have a version of your website that shows in dollars or euros or whatever currency you choose.
Oh, I did not know that, so that is a good tip, thank you. And on the government procurement expert, but I do know that there is a tendency, and people certainly feel this, that it's the same companies that get the same business over and over and over again. And we are trying to open it up. We had a procurement bill go through Parliament. Since we left the EU, we've been able to make changes to some rules. We also did some work on the inclusion programme, which we talked about, which was about getting those businesses that don't get a look into government contracts and tendering, providing support, providing help, because we want the diversity of supply. We need that plurality. If it's the same companies doing everything, it actually builds a lot of systemic risk. There's a specific example that you have. My staff who are at the conference can pick up with you separately. I don't know very much about what is happening at the MOD. I think I understood your question correctly. But we might be able to give you more advice on how you can learn more about the system, how the process works, in order to make sure that small businesses can actually get a look in, and it's not just the big, large corporates who do all of the delivery, because that's not good for the business environment generally. It's not good for starting up and scaling up. We need as many people as possible getting involved in government contracts. They bring a lot of intelligence and understanding, which helps us make things better generally. Thank you. All right, I think we're going to wrap up at this point. I'm handing over to Kevin Hollenrig. Thank you, everyone, so much.